All right, hi everybody. If you are wondering if spot reduction is real or it's a myth, stay tuned. I'm going to give you my opinion. Okay, hi everybody. So a very long-standing popular question is, can you spot reduce? I get this a lot from women, specifically asking about their glutes, their hams. I get it from men, asking about their love handles, which is where my fat goes. And I just wanted to share some thoughts on this. So there is some kind of interesting scientific data out there on this. Back in 1971, the year before I was born, they did a study on tennis players, and they looked at the body fat in their arms, because the tennis player has one arm they're using a lot, one arm that you're not using. So if it came down to just exercise, you would figure that their dominant arm would be leaner. But anyway, long story short, they didn't find any statistical significance, any statistical difference, I should say, in the dominant arm and their non-dominant arm. And you would think with tennis players, you'd see that dominant arm would be much leaner because of the extra muscle. And then in 2007, there was a study done, I want to say in Connecticut, it was a little over 100 people, where they looked at dominant arms and non-dominant arms, and they also kind of looked at the same thing, the exercise, the non-dominant arm, and so forth. But anyways, long story short, again, they didn't find any difference. Now, those were just a couple studies. I'm not always the first one to see a study and go, okay, it's black and white, this study says this. That is not my game. I do think, however, it's good to look at that stuff and analyze it. But at the end of the day, I look at real life, what's happening with the people that I work with. And I've worked with a lot of people over many years. And there have been some suggestions that you can spot reduce. I'm going to share those with you, and I'm going to give you an overriding opinion. So you have, just to keep this simple, you have these cool things called beta receptors that allow you to burn fat in your body when you stimulate them. And you have these things called alpha receptors, which tend to be in greater number on the stubborn body fat areas. And those are a little different, a little harder to target. So in bodybuilding, there was actually a guy named Dan Duchesne back many years ago. And Dan was kind of a pioneer. He was a little crazy, but I really liked him because he thought outside the box. Some of the stuff he did was just insane. But he was also a pioneer with what some of the guys do chemically in bodybuilding. And back then, Dan was the first guy who actually had people using ACE inhibitors. Now, ACE inhibitors, ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme, I believe, but it's a blood pressure medicine. But it had a way of targeting those alpha receptors. So there was a thought back then that there was the ability to target it some. And I did that back in the 2000s. We used different things. We used Zestrol, and then now a few of us use Altase, and it was actually a good medication to keep your blood pressure normal too. But that was a theory. I don't know that it was, I'm not saying it didn't work, but I didn't see anything dramatic. And then you had these theories about yohimbine. Yohimbine is supposed to target these alpha receptors as well. We've used yohimbine for a long time. I actually don't like yohimbine. It makes me sick to my stomach. It makes me feel like I'm going to vomit. Some people take ridiculous amounts of yohimbine. So there was this thought that yohimbine can help, and that's been incorporated into diets for a long time. Again, I don't know that I necessarily buy it, because if you look at fat, so fat is a glycerol backbone, and it's triglycerides. And what happens when you exercise? Let's say you're training your arms. In order for you to burn fat, you have to kind of liberate the triglycerides. You get these fatty acids and you put them in your bloodstream so they can be burned out. The problem is it's not all local. Like if you're training your arms, it doesn't mean like all the fat would come out. It doesn't mean all the triglycerides in your arm would be used for energy. It's coming systemically from your body. So in my opinion, it's very, very, very hard to spot reduce just based on that fact alone. You know, a lot of people talk about doing exercise fasted because they're burning a higher percentage of fat for their overall calories that they're burning. But I would tell you this too. I think that's overrated. I mean, if you look at the amount of calories that you burn, let's say sit-ups. Let's say somebody's doing sit-ups to try to burn calories and burn fat off their stomach. The amount of calories that they're burning is so low. And then if you think, if anything is major is going to happen, if they're doing that, say, fasted from fat, I just don't buy that either. And then there's a lot of people that promote HIIT training, high intensity interval training. I see a lot of guys having women do a lot of this in the belief that it's going to shave body fat off of their glutes and legs, so forth. I don't know that I buy that either. So I know it seems like I've been real negative. This doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. So I'm going to give you what I do think works. I think at the end of the day, unless your hormones are really, really jacked up, you got to realize two things. Number one is probably almost half of your body fat distribution is going to be genetics. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's not to say you can't do anything about it. It's just there's a percentage of that that's going to be hard to fight. Okay. Number two, I believe at the end of the day, you have to be in a caloric deficit. Now, here's the problem. And this is the number one problem that I see in physique competitions with people who have uneven fat distribution. You have people like myself, for instance. I carry all my fat in my love handles. I can have very lean measurements over my entire body, but I still have fat on my love handles. So I got to get into this deficit. I got to push and push and push and push to get that fat off. And then what happens is you start to lose muscle in the other areas. My shoulders might lose muscle. My upper chest might start to lose muscle. My lower lats, typically the muscles that are the toughest for you to build will go first. And I can tell you many, many guys, they find this, their shoulders, their upper chest, and their lower lats. And this is a problem in general. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here with glute chasing. People are so enamored with ripped glutes. To get that level of body fat, they often lose their chest, their shoulders, or lower lats, and they just look kind of like stick figures with ripped glutes. I'm not impressed at all by that look. So at the end of the day, you have to be in a caloric deficit. But again, body fat, I mean, it's going to be used systemically and not locally. I do think it's nice. What I would do is the areas that are the most stubborn, I would work the hardest on building them up. Like if the first thing to go is your shoulders, then I would work diligently on your shoulders to get them so developed that they didn't lose as much when you're trying to get ripped and lose that stubborn fat. And that to me is what you do. To me, you take the body parts that disappear and you work as hard as you can to develop them as much as you can so that when you're in that last gear, 2 weeks or whatever it takes to get that last little bit of stubborn fat off, that you have some muscle left. I think that's the right approach. Not, fasted exercise for your biceps to make your biceps leaner. Anyways, I wanted to share those thoughts with you. My opinion based on what I've seen over decades of working with people. I hope this helps you and just gives you some kind of thoughts that you can put into your next program, because most of us don't store body fat evenly. And the people who do, it's a tremendous gift to be able to store body fat evenly. Look at a guy like Flex Wheeler, perfect body fat distribution. So when he came down, everything looked nice and full, a genetic freak. But anyways, hope you like that. I hope it's very helpful. And if I was unclear about anything, just make sure you comment below and I'm happy to answer your questions. Thanks for watching.